again, for in-depth articles, for more, which is beyond the scope of the show, go to icraa.org, ikra.org, and you'll find the articles explaining, giving the citations, the hadith, the explanation of the scholars, the proofs, the evidences, the abstract is there, the summary, the conclusion, and of course the works cited page. Everything is in line with international citation standards. And if you really are keen to know more, if you just want to know the basics to understand, then this is, inshallah, will be very, very important for you to get it from these episodes, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today we're going to talk about what's called the so-called multiple Qur'ans, right? That people say, oh, you guys have multiple Qur'ans. We have the qira'at, okay, or the ahruf. And first and foremost, again, we don't want to get into detail here, but the ahruf are not the same as the qira'at, okay? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is very clear as to what the ahruf meant. And when the angel came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said, let me recite the Qur'an in one harf, and the angel said, recite the Qur'an in one harf. The Prophet ﷺ said, my ummah will not be able to do that, increase, and then keep it increasing until it reaches 7. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whichever way they recite it, it is correct. So very basic to understand that the qira'at means modes of recitation or ways, and all of them are accepted. The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear. What was it? Is because he said, my ummah will not be that. So it lifts any hardship. It allows for a certain flexibility in recitation. And that's why the best way is the hadith. When some people came and accused a person who used to write for the Prophet ﷺ, he used to say, oh, when he says this, I said that. And he says this, and I changed, and I said that. And the Prophet ﷺ said, there's no problem. It's not a big deal. There's no change in the Qur'an. There is no change in the Qur'an. These people are trying to say, oh, when he put wa, I put fa. If it's fa, I put wa. There's nothing. You have to understand the argument that these silly people try to make to confuse you, right? You're talking here about, if you draw the parallel in the previous scriptures, is that G with small g and G with big G. It's one letter here, but what a big change in theology. Because small God means something different than big God. If you change the small g to big G, you have just made someone God. Even the highest critics, when the Orientalists, when they've looked at the issue of the ahruf and qira'at, and they'll not say that this is God's book and so on, they say, look, in the end of the day, there is no change in the Qur'an. Yani, if anything, this proves that nothing was changed. If such a petty argument comes and says, oh, this says wa and this has fa, this is an extra alif. This is, you say, and you change the pronunciation, for example, in saying Musa, you say Muse, okay, as in one of the qira'at. When you look at these arguments, then you say that, wow, mashallah, I really know the Qur'an is preserved. Because look what a petty argument. Instead of saying Musa, you say Muse, right? So very important thing, fundamental thing is that the qira'at is not the same as the ahruf. We're going to explain in a second. But just to know, the ahruf are ways of recitation. They are modalities. They're not differences. They are not multiple, as some people say. It's not correct to sometimes say different readings. They're not different readings. Because when we say different readings, this says there's a difference. There's no difference. The message is the same. Allah has protected the message. There is no doubt about it. So these are multiple. When you say variations, it can be like, well, which one? No. And it's very clear. Again, Prophet ﷺ was told by Gabreil, it was revealed, okay? It is to create flexibility and an ease so that people don't feel kharaj or hardship. And it was revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was preserved. And that's why when Umar Khattab heard one of the Sahabas to recite in a certain way, he was not familiar. But he knew which surah he's reciting. This is very important. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed him actually. He's like, oh, how come? Look how he's reciting. And he heard him recite. And recited. And then he told Omar, you recite. And he recited and said, this is how it was revealed. Both of them are correct. There was no like, oh, small g becomes big G, and this is made God, and that is changed to this, and that. No, see, this is the fundamental problem. When people make such an argument, they don't go into understand. They just think, you see, 7, oh, it's not 1, 7, 7. So this is a very petty argument. The next point that is very important now, that the qira'ah is not the same as the haruf. The qira'ah is the famous way, the famous reciters, the qurra, who recited Okay, so the ahruf is in the qira'ah. Okay, the 7 ahruf were preserved in the qira'ah. The famous qaris who came and recited, we all know. Okay, the 10 recitations from the famous reciters who are linked to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So people need to understand. When you say he recites in warsh, for example. Okay, this is the qira'ah of warsh. And how we recite. Is the ahruf preserved in the qira'at? Yes. Is it preserved in hafs? Yes. So this is the fundamental importance that someone has to understand. All right? So the reciters recited. It was passed on from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ checked it. As we said, you recite, it's the same. This is how Allah revealed it. It has the link to the Prophet ﷺ. There's no break in the link. There's not someone invented it. And in the end of the day, the simple litmus test. What did they say? What is the message? Because what's the point of the so-called corruption, the tahrif? يحرفون كلام الله. And they make tahrif. Again, harf, right? They change. So from small g, they make a big G. From big G, they make it small g. Son of God. Now it's a specific term. But there's many sons of gods in the Bible. But you see, they're trying to highlight something, to change the theology. And this is probably the most important point to understand this. When people talk about the so-called 7 recitations, when people talk about the differences in the Bible, or the differences in Hindu scriptures, or the differences in any other scriptures, the end of the day, you don't want to get caught up in, oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 300 something different versions of the Bible. So even if it's 360, what's the problem? The point is that what do they say and why are they different? So you take the Qur'ans and you analyze them. And you say, okay, let's go. So if someone tried to change something, because that's why we supposedly, as the accusation goes, then let us see what happened. What is the result of the change? And you find, Qul Allahu Ahad, Tawheed, Tawheed, more Tawheed. Muhammad is the Prophet of Allah. Jesus is the Prophet of Allah. Nothing. I challenge anyone to bring one thing, one difference between this Qur'an. One difference. No one can do it. But then let's turn to the other side. You don't have to challenge, people will be shy to even open the chapter. Because the differences are evident. The changes. In this one, it says something, and the other one says something else. The theology can be understood in the Gospel of John much, much more different than the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is portrayed differently. It's a different understanding. And that's why the Christian scholars have to explain. So you find this explanation. Well, see, in this Gospel is presented as the human being, the servant, and this Gospel is presented as God. These are, of course, you always have to explain yourself in a way. And that is why it's very important in these arguments that you don't get stuck in the details that you don't have the ability and the tools to assess. And you go back to the basic. Let's put the things together. Compare. You'll not find in the Qur'an a footnote saying, this verse was not found in the early scriptures or in the early, in the Latin Vulgates or something like that. See, that is why, brothers and sisters, it's so important to understand the basics and to go back to the basics so you don't get confused. Because you don't have maybe the tools to understand ulum al-Qur'an and the science of the Qur'an and the qira'at and what Ibn al-Jazari said and what all the scholars said and how the qira'at and this is science. Not just that, look at that. Any ikhtilaf in the ummah about the 10 qira'at? None. We have scholars who memorize all 10 and can recite to you in the qira'at. And subhanAllah, wallah al-azim, when you hear it, and you can hear it's there. We don't hide. This is the thing. Imagine, if we were trying to read, that's why all these different copies happen in the different scriptures, because people say, no, we're going to get it the right one, and we're going to get the right one, and we don't believe in yours. Look at the ummah. There's ijma' on what is authentic. People memorize it. We have our scholars, our schools that learn all the 10 qira'at. SubhanAllah, and they never mix. Why? Because this is one qira'at, this is one qira'at, this is one qira'at, this is the correct way. You have to do it right. Because it comes from the Prophet ﷺ. You're not going to take, for example, a hadith from here and a hadith from their parts and then mix it. No, it's not allowed. This is one and this is one. This is correct, this is correct, this is correct. But again, nothing of difference, nothing of variation or contradiction. SubhanAllah, look at the miracle that within the Qur'an, no contradiction. That's impossible. If someone is trying to make it up, If this came as a result of mistakes or no, it's deliberate. The Prophet ﷺ read it like that. But if this would come as a mistake, then you would find the mistakes, the contradictions. That's why Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not ponder over the Qur'an? وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِي اخْتِلَافٍ كَثِيرًا. Inshallah, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this talking more. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Presents over 100 million viewers at one of the largest peace conferences in the world, addressing a sea of spellbound spectators. Over 30 world-renowned orators on Islam with credentials impeccable.
The truth of Islam.
Deen is your way of life.
It is our duty, our obligation.
By following the Qur'an and Sunnah, we will give the message to one and all.
With articulation exquisite.
Read the book of Allah.
Islam is the easy way. It's the simple way.
Remind each other.
The Muslim is not a source of harm for other people.
Collaborate with the people for good.
This is the call of Islam.
With the mission of spreading the truth of Islam.
Do what you can to spread the word of Islam.
Wherever we are,
Live like Muslims.
Use your power.
Allah is saying, why do you need anything else? This Qur'an is self-sufficient.
the only book on the face of the globe, the Qur'an. How a human being should lead his life is given in this instruction manual, the glorious Qur'an.
For peace to prevail on earth in Peacemakers. Next on Peace TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Before the break, we're talking about the huruf and the qira'at. What is the qira'ah? And we said how this is a miracle actually from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That subhanAllah, imagine Allah has given this flexibility for the recitation from the Prophet ﷺ, all linked. And if you compare, this is the simple way, not to get confused, oh, why 1, why not 2, why 7? Compare, nothing. The Orientalists themselves say, no contradiction. How can? If this was product of human being, it would be contradiction. Especially if there's variations, right? Because the variations mean there's fundamental differences, like in the Bible or in other scriptures, in the Gitas. Fundamental differences, because people have tried to change. And not just that, if there's a change or variation, you have to understand that it's been done for a reason, which is what? To change the message. Why would people want to do that? Number one, we've said it before in the previous episode, to get rid of some law, get rid of some point of theology, and so on. Why is the certain gospels have been dealt with? And because the theology that they showed, how they represented Jesus, was contradicting to what the church was believing. So they gathered only the ones that agreed with what they believed. You understand? So if you were to compare, because there's a difference, then you find there should be some different contradictions. And as we recited the verse, that أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not ponder the Quran? Ponder, not be, oh, I heard this, I read this, oh, I'm confused now. Think. It requires a person to actually exercise intellect. Not these petty arguments that people come on the website and on this website and on social media. If you want the truth, you need to think a little about it. Because if it was not from Allah, if it was from other than Allah, you will find in it many contradictions. اختلافا كثيرا. Many contradictions. You see, why? Because if it's the product of human beings, then you'll find contradictions. Just as simple as that. Check any book. Why are there editions of books? First edition, second edition, third edition, revised edition. I mean, subhanAllah, the Bible has revised, New International Version. Revised. Revised this, revised that. I think it's revised New International. But anyway, one of the copies is revised. New International Version. New this, new that. Why? Because people have put their hands in it. So when there's hands of human beings there, then there's mistakes and contradictions. The Quran was never revised. Okay, there was never, after the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, those who walked with him, those who read the Quran from him, those who learned it from him, those who prayed behind him, when they agreed, all of them, unanimous, when they all agreed, there was no revision. They agreed on the qira'ah. They agreed on the ahruf. They knew what the Quran. This is how Omar recited. This is how Ali recited. Everyone, the Prophet ﷺ gave the stamp. They compiled it. There was no revision. There's no such thing as a council, 100 years, the Abbasids or, the other, they gathered and they say, oh, what is the Quran? No, they memorized it. We said it was preserved. No confusion. The only ones who are confused are the missionaries, and they tried to confuse you. Actually, they're not confused, because as we said, even those Orientalists, they recognize and they say, out of all the religious books, if anything, we have to say the Quran is solid. Even the Qur'an, even the multiple readings, compare anything, no contradiction. Amazing. It's a miracle. And if you don't have the tools to check that, and you don't want to get confused, subhanAllah, you're a much less simple person like me, and you don't want to get confused and so on, test it. The litmus test is there. Allah says, okay, you're saying that this so-called variations or so-called is from people getting involved. Okay, fine. Test it. Where's the change? About what? No change. Okay, fine. Let's test it again. Allah's giving you a test. Okay, I'll give you the test. I'll tell you. I'll make you the test. If you think that this is from other than Allah, find a contradiction. None. Zero. Allah is challenging you. Okay, fine. I'll tell you how to disprove the Quran. Find a contradiction. Because if any human person had any say in it, then you find for sure contradiction, as you find in any other book in this world other than the Quran. Any other book in this world that exists, be it scientific, be it literature, whatever it is, you'll find some revision, some contradiction. The author says, I could have done this better, let me go back. First edition, second edition, and so on. Including religious books. So the problem is that people are not honest. People want you to get confused. That's why always the safety is to go back to the basics. Go back to the basics, verify, check, put it together, put it next to each other. See it one by one, and you'll find. I was in a position like that at one time. I remember hearing about it the first time. It shocked me. Why? Because I was ignorant. I didn't know. Because many Muslims are ignorant. They don't know. They think they just receive the Quran from hand to hand. No. And I remember going and checking, putting things together, seeing, okay, one letter here, everything. Okay, there's extra alif here. Okay, but it means the same thing, everything. Fine, because the Quran was recited and the way it's pronounced. This is important. Did anything change? No. These people are saying it changed. No, it didn't. Pay attention. You have to be honest. And it's requiring from you honesty. Be honest. And you'll find that if you're honest, you find that, alhamdulillah, Quran is one. It's very, without a doubt, anyone can say the Quran has always been one. And the petty arguments will always fly. They'll disappear. They'll disappear because no, we don't agree. Okay, fine. Where is the change? Oh, it's here. Okay, there's nothing. What's the deal? Change what? What change? Nothing. Let's look at real changes. Bring your witnesses here. Bring your book. Where you're trying to hide the real message of this or that. Monotheism in the Giras. Monotheism, brothers and sisters, that's been hid and changed. Monotheism. Read the first commandment. Where does Paul come up with, and you're trying to say that this is what he meant, and that's what he meant, and that's what God meant when he says, you know, in the first commandment, I am your Lord thy God. It's Tawheed. How can you cover Tawheed, man? You can't cover Tawheed. In the worst case, it'll be exposed, because there's Tawheed and here's Shirk. You see, in the end of the day, no matter how much you try, Allah will always expose it. God will always expose it. The truth will always be very, very apparent. That is why there's no contradiction. Simple. You want to talk about hruf, qira'at, this and that. Simple way. Is there a contradiction? No. What does it mean? It's not from human beings. Can you bring something like it if you think it's from human being because you're a human? No, you can't. No one has ever done it. Oh, but I don't know Arabic. I don't know this. This is not fair. Challenge. Allah is saying, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. Bring a surah like it. And you believe it's not from Allah, okay? وَإِن كُنتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَى عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ فإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي وقودها الناس والحجار وعدت للكافرين. Very simple. Allah is challenging you, challenging anyone till the day that Allah decides to raise the Qur'an. Allah has challenged and will be challenging people to come with something like it. This is simple, you know, but you see these people try to confuse, to complicate. Simple, simple. You see what someone says? This is the simple way. Here we go. Let's analyze it. Let's challenge it. You bring it. So I hope it's clear, brothers and sisters. I hope you understand. Don't get confused by these people. Go back, as I said, if you want to review, you'll find it on our website, icr.org. The article is called 7 Ahruf, Review of Contemporary English Explanations, which goes into some of the mistakes that some of the people, and since obviously, you know, this is a difference of opinion here, you know, they try to explain it. But you see, if you're not careful, a lot of times if you don't think, how will the other people interpret? The missionaries, they might use your argument to prove theirs. So you have to choose your words careful when you're explaining it to people. Inshallah, we believe that we've done a good job in explaining that. As I said, if you go to our download section, you'll find a few critical books that are very, very important for you to look at. The first one, as I said, is the Qur'an and Orientalists. And this is very important. It's an examination of the main theories and assumptions by Sheikh Muhammad Ali. And the next one is History of the Quranic Text from Revelation to Compilation, a comparative study with an Old and New Testament by Muhammad Mustafa Al-Azami. Again, very, very big, a huge contribution to the Ummah in the English language. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, brothers and sisters, keep you strong in the deen, keep you strong on the path of Islam, cause no confusion bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your mind. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to learn, understand, and always be ready. This is not something that should be overlooked. This is something that people have to take responsibility over, to explain, to understand more, to make it firm. Because the first time you hear it, if you don't know it, it's going to cause sometimes anxiety. You need to learn it. When people come and try to confuse you, you'll be strong and solid. You'll be able to reply to them. Bi-idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll see you on another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.